So my name is John Kelly. I work for a company called Expleo. We're a French company with a worldwide presence, and we provide engineering services to other companies in industry. One of the many services that we provide is in technical documentation. And in particular, we work very closely with the company, one of our customers called Schneider Electric. And we've been working with them now since 2007 on technical documentation, and working very closely with WHP as well for the translation. I do apologize.
You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Is that okay if I...
Yeah, keep your camera off.
Yeah. Keep the camera off, and let's try and pick off where we left off. So working with Schneider on their documentation. Today I wanted to talk to you about our experience in a big DITA migration that Schneider performed on many of their documents in a tool that they were using. Just to stress, I'm obviously not a Schneider Electric employee, so this is really what I'm going to share with you is the point of view from the users, the writer's perspective, let's say, regarding this migration, which was managed internally within Schneider. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about this migration that we did with Schneider. And in fact, they were migrating from a system which was almost DITA standard, I would say. As you can see, it was called TCT. It was a topic-based authoring system using structured content, XML, and it was single source. So in theory, at least, migrating that to a DITA system, their DITA system is called Motif, should have been reasonably straightforward. Everything seems to be aligned. But if I'm talking to you today, I think we'll see there were some interesting aspects to it that make it an interesting experience to share with you. Just to give you a little bit of background, this, as I say, it was a very large migration. We were migrating the content from a tool that had been in place since 1999. I've got to say, for me, Schneider were actually a little bit ahead of the curve there in 1999, having a topic-based authoring system in place. They needed to migrate approximately 1,600 manuals. There were actually over 3,000 in the database, but about 1,600 to migrate, which meant that when we take into account all the target languages of those manuals, it was more like about 6,400 manuals that were being migrated. And one of the big issues was migrating all of those source to target language relationships as well. Really scary number there. We actually had about 3.5 million objects to be migrated. So that's topics, graphics, and any other content that we had. So that was a huge number. There was extensive sharing within the tool, a lot of topics being shared between different manuals and graphics being shared around. And there were about 70 users worldwide that were using the old tool that needed to be migrated across to the new tool. So this was a monumental migration, as I say. The positives, well, one of the things that was a definite positive was that they were migrating to an existing functioning DITA solution that Schneider already had in place that was already being used by a number of departments. So that was good. It was an automated migration that they put in place, which was managed centrally by somebody within Schneider, or a number of people within Schneider who managed that. So from the writer's point of view, there wasn't an awful lot to do about actually getting the migration done. Most of that was handled centrally. A few other minor points. One of the nice things about the new solution was that it had separate product areas so that we could restrict access to the writers that needed to work on specific kinds of documents. In the previous tool, there was just one big giant database, and if you had access to the database, then you had access to every single manual. Another nice touch was when they did the migration, they created some individual library files that were a big help for the users, for the writers, I should say, to access definitive lists of the conrefs that were being used on a manual by manual basis. And then at the same time, there was also an evolution towards some in-house translation tools that Schneider wanted to move forward on at the same time, and we could work with them on that as well. So those were the good, the positive aspects. And on average, this is taking us about 2 days per manual. So obviously, we've not gone in and cleaned up all 1,600 manuals. But every time we want to work on a manual, the first task is to do the cleanup. And as I say, on average, it's about 2 days a manual. Another negative or another disappointing aspect, which unfortunately could not be avoided for numerous reasons, was that we lost a lot of the reuse that we had. So I mentioned that we were reusing topics and graphics and the equivalents of conrefs in the old system. A lot of that was lost during the migration, and a lot of the manuals were migrated independently. So that was an unfortunate aspect. We also had to have a number of situations where we were putting square pegs in round holes. Again, there were always good reasons for it, but the unfortunate consequence for the end writer is that, for example, we see where the old tool was using what we call step action tables to provide a procedure or a process to follow. These had to be migrated not as tasks, which would be the logical way to migrate them, but instead they had to be migrated as concepts with a kind of manually filled table. So that was rather unfortunate, but that, again, there were many good reasons for that. Another disappointing aspect was that the graphics, we could not migrate all of the source renditions of the graphics, because in the old tool, we would create the graphic, for example, using, I don't know, Adobe Illustrator, and then within the old tool, we could save a GIF rendition of that graphic or a JPEG or other renditions of the graphic, and decide which rendition we would use depending on the publication we were going to make. But for the new DITA database, we could only migrate across one rendition. So it tended to be the GIF, so that we would at least have a GIF that we could use. And that's meant that we've had to manage the graphics outside of the DITA database, at least as a first step. We also had some surprises with the migration of the translations, which didn't always come out according to plan. So we've had some actions that we've had to do there to reconnect the translations back again. And then there was actually a significant training investment as well required, because even though we have writers who are already trained on the DITA standard, there were a number of new things to learn about how to navigate your way around the new documentation database, or how to use the Arbortext XML editor in order to do the DITA updates, or how to publish, various things like that. So there has been quite a significant training required, even for experienced users. And finally, a little mention that I guess partially because we added 70 new users to the existing DITA tool, it's meant that we've had some issues occasionally with latency and with availability of the servers. So that's occasionally been an issue for us. Next steps. Well, little by little now, we are starting to reshare topics and graphics and definitions again. That's been an important aspect for us to try and start sharing some of the content again. We've been integrating some fixes in order to get rid of those nasty translation surprises that we've had. The experience that we gained on the first few nasty surprises has allowed Schneider to put in place some workarounds, some fixes that we can go in and put in place now before we have any more surprises, so that's good. We've also been doing a lot of work to integrate SVG format graphics, because of course using the SVG format translation becomes simpler and cheaper, and of course this is better for example for HTML5 output. And it also means that by using SVG graphics, we have the SVG is basically the source version of the graphic, and that's in the database then. And finally, of course, over time, the writers become more experienced with the tool, and we improve our productivity